Good morning. Let me start with a truth that changed my life. The more I talked about what I was going to do, the less I actually did it. Focusing on yourself is not selfish. It's foundational. It's not about ignoring others. It's about prioritizing the one person you can control, you. Everything in your life, your business, your relationships, your finances, your peace, starts with you. And if you don't have you under control, nothing else will stay under control for long. The world tries to convince you that multitasking, comparison, and constant exposure to other people's opinions is productivity, but it's not. It's a distraction disguised as diligence. You don't need to monitor what everyone else is doing. You need to monitor yourself. When you fix your focus inward, what happens outward begins to change. Self-discipline is the truest form of self-love. When you focus on yourself, you begin to ask hard questions. Why do I react like that? Why am I procrastinating? Why do I seek approval before I move? Those answers aren't on social media. They're not in a book. They're in the mirror. Focusing on yourself means examining the unhealed places and choosing to grow through them instead of masking them with busyness. It means asking not just what do I want, but who am I becoming? That's where real transformation begins. Now, this kind of focus is hard because it forces you to face the truth, and most people don't want truth. They want comfort. That's why they're addicted to distractions, addicted to noise, addicted to attention, because it helps them avoid the silence. But let me tell you something. If you never sit still long enough to be uncomfortable, you'll never grow deep enough to be unshakable. Focus is a filter. It reveals what matters and exposes what doesn't. It silences the drama and highlights the discipline. When you start focusing on yourself, you stop looking at other people as competition. You stop keeping score. You stop trying to one-up somebody else's life, because when you're truly focused on you, you're too busy leveling up to look sideways. You're not thinking about who's ahead of you or who's behind you. You're just trying to make sure that the version of you today is better than the version of you yesterday. That's progress. That's growth. That's what builds greatness. People often ask, how do I find my purpose? But you can't find purpose in a noisy mind. Purpose requires clarity. Clarity requires stillness. And stillness requires focus. Focusing on yourself means creating the space to hear the voice of God, the whisper of wisdom, the signal within the static. You can't hear divine direction when you're drowning in distractions. When you tune out the chaos, you begin to hear the call. And when you hear the call, you move differently, you speak differently, you think differently. That's how focus changes your identity, because it changes what you're tuned into. It's not just about tuning out the world. It's also about tuning into your work, the thing you're building, the vision you're carrying, the skill you're developing. That takes full, undivided attention, and in today's world, focus is a superpower. Everyone is so busy being everywhere that they never truly arrive anywhere. But when you train yourself to be present, to show up fully, to focus on one goal, one mission, one priority, you become dangerous in the best way. Because a focused person is a fruitful person. They don't move fast. They move with intention. They don't seek approval. They seek results. Discipline starts with decisions. And the most powerful decision you can make is to say, I will no longer abandon myself for the sake of distractions. That's not ego. That's accountability. That's ownership. That's leadership. You become your own standard. You measure success by alignment, not applause. You build confidence not by being noticed, but by being consistent. Every time you focus, you compound. Every time you commit, you create. Every time you eliminate the noise, you elevate your name. Silence is one of the most misunderstood strengths in today's world. People think if you're silent, you're weak. If you're quiet, you don't know. If you're not talking, you're not doing. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Silence is not the absence of activity. It's the presence of awareness. It's what allows you to hear what others miss. It's where observation becomes revelation. The person who stays silent long enough begins to see what everyone else is too loud to notice. Because while others are speaking to be heard, the silent person is listening to understand. And when you understand, you gain power. When you operate in silence, you don't reveal your strategy. You don't give your playbook to people who haven't earned the right to see it. Talking too much about what you're doing is like opening a vault before you've built the walls around it. Every word you speak is a seed, and if you plant those seeds in the wrong soil, in front of people who are skeptical, insecure, or jealous, they will not grow. In fact, some people will actively work to choke the life out of your ideas before they even take root. That's why silence isn't just wise, it's protective. There's a reason military operations are called stealth missions. The element of surprise is a weapon, and in life, that same principle applies. When people don't know what you're building, they can't sabotage it. They can't criticize it prematurely. They can't steal it, mimic it, or weaken it. The quiet phase is the incubation period. That's when your ideas mature. That's when your habits solidify. That's when your character forms around your calling. If you break the silence too early, you risk giving birth to something that isn't strong enough to stand yet. Silence also keeps your energy focused, because talking takes energy, explaining takes energy, defending your vision to people who don't understand it takes energy, and that's energy you could be using to build, to grow, to sharpen. Every time you feel the urge to prove yourself verbally, ask yourself if your actions could speak instead. Most of the time, the answer is yes, and not only is it yes, it's better, because words are easy, but results are undeniable. You don't have to convince anybody when the fruit of your labor is visible. Now, some people stay loud because they're addicted to attention. They want recognition before results. They want applause before achievement. But that's not how legacy is built. Legacy is built in the shadows. It's built during the early mornings when no one's watching. It's built during the late nights when the world is asleep. It's built during the seasons of solitude when all you have is faith and grit. The loud ones make noise, but the quiet ones make moves, and over time the quiet ones always win, because while others were shouting, they were sharpening. Silence creates space for clarity. You can't think deeply when you're always talking. You can't innovate when you're always explaining. You can't hear divine instruction when your mouth is always moving. Stillness is not passive, it's preparatory. The most powerful ideas, the most strategic decisions, and the most profound insights are often born in silence. That's where you hear the things that aren't being said. That's where you recognize patterns, sense timing, and discern opportunity. When you stay silent, you stop reacting and start responding. You stop being pulled by emotion and start being guided by wisdom. You don't just hear what was said. You hear what wasn't said. You read the energy in the room. You spot inconsistencies. You pick up on patterns, and suddenly you're playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. You're moving strategically while they're moving emotionally. You're seeing 5 steps ahead while they're still trying to win the moment. Silence gives you the upper hand, not because you're doing less, but because you're perceiving more. Not everyone deserves access to your vision. That's one of the most important principles you can learn on your path to purpose. Vision is sacred. It's not something you casually throw into conversations. It's not something you post about for likes or share with people who haven't earned your trust. Vision is a divine assignment, a seed planted in your spirit by something greater than you. And just like you wouldn't leave a precious jewel out in the open where anyone can grab it, you shouldn't expose your dreams to people who can't comprehend them, because exposure without discernment invites destruction. There are people in your life right now who don't want to see you win. They might smile to your face, clap at your progress, and pretend to support you, but underneath that applause is silent resentment. They see your elevation as their reminder of stagnation. They feel threatened by your movement because it reminds them of their own lack of motion. When you share your vision with these kinds of people, you unintentionally hand them ammunition. They might not attack you directly, but they'll plant seeds of doubt, whisper discouragement, or mock your ambition behind your back. That's why guarding your vision isn't selfish, it's wise. Some people simply aren't qualified to speak into your destiny. They don't have the experience, the maturity, or the spiritual insight to understand what you're building. When you let unqualified people have input on your vision, you open yourself up to confusion. You start questioning what you know is right because someone with no fruit and no foundation offered their opinion. But opinions don't build dreams. Clarity does, focus does, faith does. The wrong voice at the wrong time can derail your direction and delay your destiny. That's why silence isn't just golden. It's necessary. Vision needs protection during its infancy. When an architect designs a skyscraper, the blueprint isn't shared with everyone. Only the builders, engineers, and stakeholders see the plan. That's because too many voices create too many variations. The same applies to your vision. When you speak too soon, you invite edits before the first draft is finished, and some people don't want to revise it. They want to rewrite it in their image. They want to make it smaller, safer, more acceptable, but your vision isn't supposed to be safe. It's supposed to stretch you. It's supposed to challenge the limits of what others think is possible. You don't need to make it palatable. You need to make it real. You don't owe an explanation to people who didn't receive the same calling. The vision was given to you, not to the crowd. That means the conviction, the responsibility, the clarity, all of it lives in your spirit. When others can't see it, that's okay. They weren't meant to. Sometimes the people closest to you will be the last to believe in you, not because they don't love you, but because they can't imagine you becoming something beyond what they've always known. Their familiarity blinds them to your future. Don't take it personally. Just protect the vision. When you withhold your vision from the wrong people, you create space to develop it with the right ones. You attract alignment. You begin to recognize the difference between supporters and spectators, between partners and parasites. You begin to notice who asks thoughtful questions and who just wants updates. Some people are more interested in tracking your progress than celebrating it. Others are waiting for a moment to say, "I told you so." If it fails, the more you talk, the more information you give to people who may be rooting for your collapse rather than your completion. Your vision is a construction zone, and construction zones come with barriers, warnings, and restricted access for a reason. Not everyone can walk through an unfinished project and appreciate what it will become. Some only see mess, chaos, and debris, but the builder sees structure, order, and potential. Until it's ready for presentation, keep it in development, keep it close, keep it private. Because when it's complete, the results will speak louder than any premature explanation ever could. Energy is one of the most valuable currencies you have, and how you spend it determines the quality of your life. You only get so much energy each day, and if you waste it on the wrong things, like people, opinions, gossip, or unnecessary competition, you end up bankrupt when it comes time to invest in what really matters. Focusing on yourself requires a level of intentionality about where your energy flows. It's not just about doing less. It's about doing the right things with precision, consistency, and purpose. When your energy is scattered, your results are too. But when your energy is focused inward on your healing, your discipline, your calling, you begin to create momentum that compounds. There's a cost to caring too much about things that don't contribute to your growth. Every time you argue with someone who doesn't matter, you lose focus. Every time you scroll aimlessly comparing your life to strangers, you lose clarity. Every time you try to prove a point to someone who refuses to understand you, you lose peace. These are silent drains on your energy, and they add up. Little distractions become daily habits, and daily habits shape long-term outcomes. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is choosing to withdraw your energy from what's unfruitful and redirect it to what's transformational. People often say, "I'm tired," and assume it's a physical issue, but most of the time, it's not the body that's exhausted. It's the mind and spirit. It's the fatigue of always being accessible, the drain of constantly engaging in conversations that go nowhere, the exhaustion of living for likes, approval, and outside affirmation. When your energy is always outward, you lose your inner alignment. You begin to respond to the world instead of building from within. And in that state, you stop creating, you stop producing, you start reacting. That's not living from power, that's surviving on performance. Redirecting your energy inward means making intentional choices about your environment, your circle, your schedule, and your attention. It means not explaining your decisions to people who haven't done the inner work to understand them. It means not attending every argument you're invited to. It means walking away from drama, even if it means walking alone. Because your energy is sacred, and when you pour it into yourself, your growth, your discipline, your health, your craft, you stop depending on external validation to feel alive. You become fueled by alignment, not applause. The moment you decide to conserve your energy is the moment you begin to rise above the noise. You don't chase trends. You create timeless value. You don't run on urgency. You operate from clarity. You don't chase after people. You attract the right ones by becoming the right one. This shift happens when your energy becomes strategic. You stop giving away pieces of yourself to every situation, and you start channeling your energy like a laser. Precise, powerful, productive. That kind of focus moves mountains not because you're doing more, but because everything you're doing has purpose. People will misunderstand you when you stop engaging in every conversation. They'll say you've changed. They'll call you distant or arrogant. But what they don't realize is that peace has a price, and you're finally willing to pay it. You no longer have time to argue about who you are or defend decisions made from deep discernment. You're protecting your peace, your purpose, and your energy. Because when you stop wasting energy outward, you finally have enough to pour into your future. Everything about your life begins to shift when you realize that not every battle is yours to fight, not every comment is yours to answer, and not every voice is yours to entertain. That maturity frees up energy to build, to heal, to elevate. You don't owe constant access to anyone, and you don't need to be available to everything. Availability without boundaries leads to depletion. Depletion leads to frustration, and frustration pulls you off purpose. But when you learn to guard your energy like treasure, you begin to see yourself as the asset you truly are. Growth is not always loud. It doesn't always come with applause, public recognition, or a visible stage. Most of the time, real growth happens in silence, in solitude, in moments when no one is watching. It's in those quiet hours when you decide to keep going despite the discomfort, when you choose discipline over distraction, when you lean into what's difficult instead of running from it. That's where transformation takes root, and that's why focusing on yourself and staying silent is one of the most powerful strategies you can adopt. Because real growth requires space, mental space, emotional space, spiritual space. And silence creates that space. When you're constantly surrounded by noise, people's opinions, constant updates, unnecessary comparison, you lose touch with your own inner voice. You begin to doubt what you know, question what you feel, and delay what you're called to do. But when you step back from the noise, you find yourself again. You rediscover your values, your direction, your priorities. You stop chasing validation and start moving from conviction. That shift is the beginning of maturity. It's where growth becomes intentional instead of accidental. You're no longer waiting on a wake-up call from life. You're setting the alarm yourself and showing up for your development every single day. The reason growth often goes unnoticed is because it doesn't always look like winning. Sometimes it looks like rest. Sometimes it looks like learning how to say no. Sometimes it's letting go of relationships that no longer align with your values. Other times, it's choosing to sit in discomfort rather than escape it. These aren't the kind of milestones people celebrate publicly, but they are the building blocks of a stronger, more stable version of you. The deeper the roots, the taller the tree can grow. But deep roots are grown underground, in silence, where no one sees the process but you. Staying silent doesn't mean staying passive. It means you're choosing progress over performance. You're doing the work without announcing every move. You're healing without broadcasting your wounds. You're learning without seeking credit. In a world obsessed with visibility, choosing to grow in private is a radical act. It's saying, I don't need to be seen to be secure. I don't need attention to have intention. That kind of self-assurance is rare because it's built in the hidden places where ego can't survive and character is refined. Growth also requires reflection. You can't elevate without evaluating, and that means taking the time to review your patterns, your decisions, your results. Are you aligned with your purpose, or are you just busy? Are your habits serving your vision, or are they sabotaging it? Reflection requires stillness. Stillness requires silence. You can't answer deep questions with a distracted mind. You need space to process, to listen, to discern. And in that space, growth becomes exponential, because now you're not just moving. You're moving with wisdom. You're not just active. You're effective. As you grow, your circle may get smaller, not because you're isolating yourself, but because you're elevating your standards. You realize that not everyone is meant to walk every level of the journey with you. Some people were only assigned to a season. Others were never supposed to go beyond the surface. When you grow in silence, you begin to see who's really for you, not just who enjoys your presence, but who respects your process, and that clarity is a gift. It allows you to build with people who pour, not just take, who challenge, not just cheer, who see your potential, not just your past. The longer you stay consistent in silence, the more obvious your growth becomes without needing to explain it. People will begin to notice a different energy about you. They won't be able to put their finger on it, but they'll feel it. That's what happens when you evolve inwardly. The results speak before you do. You walk with more confidence, move with more purpose, and lead with more clarity. And it all started in the quiet, where growth was nurtured and the noise was ignored. Self-mastery is the foundation of everything lasting, and it begins the moment you decide to stop outsourcing responsibility for your life. That decision often happens in silence, far away from the crowd, without announcement or validation. It's a turning inward, a commitment to becoming fully accountable for your actions, your mindset, your discipline, and your evolution. When you focus on yourself without distraction, you begin to notice how often you've looked outside for what could only ever come from within. Approval, confidence, direction. None of it can be sustained if it doesn't originate in your own spirit. That's why staying silent isn't weakness. It's a powerful declaration that your focus is no longer for sale. When you turn your attention inward, you begin to observe your habits, not just your goals. You start to notice the way you speak to yourself, the way you react to challenges, the thoughts that run unchecked in your mind throughout the day. Self-mastery is not about controlling the world. It's about learning how to lead yourself moment by moment. And that leadership can't happen if you're constantly speaking, explaining, or justifying. Some things need to be processed before they're expressed. Silence gives you that processing room. It lets you catch patterns before they become problems and shift direction before you waste time on detours. The world has conditioned many people to believe that power is proven through volume. How loud you can be, how boldly you can talk about your moves, how quickly you can show results. But real power doesn't announce itself. It reveals itself in how consistently you show up for yourself, how you treat your time, how you honor your commitments when no one is watching, how you choose purpose over pleasure in the quiet moments. That's not something you post. That's something you practice, and over time, that practice becomes presence. People can sense when someone has done the internal work, even if that person has never said a word. There is a confidence that comes from self-alignment that can't be faked. It's not arrogant, it's not loud, it's calm, it's rooted. It doesn't need to dominate a room to command respect. When you operate from that place, you stop needing to be the loudest voice because you know your life is already speaking. You stop being reactive because you've learned how to pause, how to reflect, how to choose your response instead of being driven by emotion. That's what self-mastery creates, power through presence, not performance. Focusing on yourself is not selfish, it's strategic. You can't give what you haven't developed. You can't lead others if you haven't led yourself. You can't create lasting impact if you're constantly fragmented, chasing everything and grounded in nothing. Silence allows you to gather yourself, to consolidate your focus, to become whole. In that stillness, you reconnect with your values, your standards, and your mission. You remember what you're building and why you started, and you realize that you don't need to keep explaining that to anyone. Your work will speak, your consistency will speak, your peace will speak. Not everyone is meant to understand your process, and that's not their fault. It's just not their assignment. You weren't called to convince, you were called to transform. That transformation happens when your attention is undivided. When your days are designed around alignment, not approval, when your success is measured by how true you've stayed to your purpose, not how loudly you've marketed your progress. Every time you protect your energy, set a boundary, or choose growth over comfort, you're practicing self-mastery. And the longer you stay in that practice, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, you reach a point where silence is no longer an effort. It's a lifestyle. You don't speak out of impulse. You don't share out of insecurity. You don't react out of ego. You move with intentionality because every word, every decision, every step is connected to a deeper mission. That kind of internal alignment is magnetic. It draws opportunities, it commands respect, and it creates freedom. Not because of what others see, but because of who you've become in the process.